Welcome to the Blind Apex Podcast, where amateur club racers tune in to get faster.
Hello and welcome to the Blind Apex Podcast. This podcast will be covering competition school and how to get through it. And I have this year's regional champ, Steve, with me. Well, not Steve with me, but Steve Brown. He's with me on the podcast. Steve, would you like to introduce yourself and give us a little bit of your background, please?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Like Con said, my name is Steve Brown. I race the number 72 Honda Challenge 2 car in Mid-Atlantic. I was lucky enough to come away with the regional championship after a surprising run of reliability this year. And part of that year was doing comp school at the start of the season in March, and it's kind of what we're here to talk about today.
So, comp school, you did the comp school at VIR. Now, for everybody listening, we're talking NASA comp school, specifically with the Mid-Atlantic region, but it's pretty much similar across the nation, I think, at this point, at least with NASA. And it's something you can expect in most comp schools. But NASA Mid-Atlantic comp school is all day on Friday, correct? At least at the March event.
Yeah, it's an all-day thing on Friday and typically that's the way they'll approach it for a 3-day weekend, where you have the track on Friday to focus on that, and then you can do your first couple provisional races Saturday and Sunday. It's right. A little bit different on 2-day events, like what are held at Summit Point with Mid-Atlantic most of the time these days. So, if you're planning on doing one of those events, I would read the event info very carefully and probably email some of the organizers about how that's going to differ from a normal Friday comp school weekend ahead of time, so you have a good idea of what to expect. It was busy enough to do it on Friday when I didn't have to worry about other stuff going on, and kind of having our own sessions to work those things in. So, in that respect, I would recommend trying to find an event that's doing it on a Friday.
For sure.
You get a more traditional weekend after Friday to put what you just went through into practice in some real races.
Yeah, mine was hectic. I think I got a lunch break. But outside of that, I was in the car or in the classroom. Is that what you experienced?
Yeah, so you're in the car and in the classroom a bunch. Definitely bring a friend. People told me to bring a friend. I talked to my buddy Mateen into coming. He ended up coming for most of the events to hang out and help on the car for most of the season, which was a big help. But his presence was absolutely most critical for comp school. I'm not sure I would have had the car running for every session without him there. Because, I would come off track and be like, okay, the car's in limp mode. It's running hot. What do we think it is? Well, we don't know, but there doesn't look like anything's wrong, so let's yank the thermostat out, gut the thermostat. Okay, I've got to run to class. Can you slap this thing back together and get the coolant bled? I'll see you back here, in 30 minutes. And then I'm going back out, immediately after the class. And, so that kind of situation where you wouldn't have had time to finish buttoning up the car without missing a class session, which would have caused an issue for you passing comp school. That's the kind of thing that your buddy's there to help you through. And absolutely bring a friend to your comp school weekend. It's really busy, and unlike a normal DE event or an instructor event, if you skip a classroom session, that's bad. If you skip an on-track session, that's not quite as bad, but it's still not really good at all. So you got to do that. And it's busy, and you're doing things you haven't done before, so you don't really know what to expect, like a normal weekend, where you kind of get into a routine and you build that up over time. So yeah, absolutely have a friend, preferably, if you can paddock with people who you already know, who are in similar cars in case you need a spare. That'd be a good idea. I
Yep.
was brand new with my car, so I didn't really know what spares to bring. I'd taken it to like a single DE event in November, like 2 years prior, as a shakedown, but that was before it had a diff, before it had a cage, before it had a wing.
Right.
So the car was very different from when I'd driven it last. Which is another thing. Don't do that. Bring a car that you kind of know how to drive.
You survived.
Like-
We've had guys that came to comp school in cars they've never driven before. They've crashed and walked away from racing altogether.
So
Yeah.
that is a risk. I think that's a risk every time you go out on track. I was confident that my previous experience with my previous car would help me climb that learning curve through comp school and let me keep my nose clean, which is another really important thing. If you go off and bin your car, if you hit somebody, I can almost guarantee you're not going to pass comp school.
Yeah, let's actually talk about your previous car and what brought you to comp school.
Yeah, so in the before times, I was in college and working events on grid, and I was able to work events and do a couple events in school. And then when I got out of school, I took that car that I'd run a couple times, and I went to make it a full track car. And so I wanted to finish my DEs so I could get my free track time as an instructor because I was broke. Unlike you, I didn't wait until I had money to start racing. So
Life decisions. And I too was a volunteer. I volunteered. I was in the tech shed for 10 plus years.
yeah,
So
I
I started
so
that way. So
yeah, so that car was a 240 SX. It had the stock K truck motor in it for a long time. I think I did 40 or 50 weekends with that motor, and I think I did 4 head gaskets on it in that time. They just wouldn't really hold. I ended up trying to get that into TT back when it was like the TTC rules, I think, is where I classed into. So I'd sometimes do instructor TT.
ABC or whatever.
Yeah, like
Those rules and not the 6, 5, 4,
yeah, like
3, 2, 1.
this would have been back in like the 2014, 2016 time frame. So I started doing instructor TT because it was like a $50 add-on to my free instructor registration, which was nice. Like it was more than just going around the track. It kind of gave you a goal, which I liked. But the problem was the 240 doesn't really class into anything, and there's not many people running it. And you kind of have two options. You can go the ST route now, and it'd probably be like an ST4 or ST5 car, I guess, depending on how much power you put in it and where you put your weight. But there's not really many people running that, and you don't have good benchmarks with people who are in a similar platform, because the weights are different, the powers are different. Even cars that you think are similar, like a BRZ to a 240, they're not, and you can't really tell if you're doing good
No
development
way,
work.
your 240 doesn't have the ABS that BRZ does.
Well, right. So the 240, mine did not have ABS. I could retrofit it if I could find a shell that had it, but that's a pain. And there basically wasn't good close racing easily accessible for that car. I could go the point system and see if I'm doing well, but I don't really know what I'm doing. Or I can spend a lot of money and do like, I guess it would have been like ST2 back then. I don't know what that is now, but like a couple notches down from ST or TTU, with the really fast Corvettes on 325
Right.
or 355.
Gigantic
Hoosiers.
hoo-hoos,
Yeah, and like the running cost of that was just kind of out of reach. So I was like, all right, what's affordable? And I was like, there's E30s. I drove one time because I needed to borrow a car to do instructing at one of the first Hyperfests that was at VIR. I borrowed Renzo Giovanni's car. I don't know if you know Jorge, but he was a 240 guy, so that's how I knew his brother with the E30. And I hated how it drove. Like, it was okay, and I'm bigger than him, so I didn't fit in the car right. But it wasn't a good like driving experience. I have friends who run E36s with BMW Club and like PCA, and so Spec 3 was an idea. But I also knew Baker, because way back in the before time when we were both at Virginia Tech, we road tripped out to Ohio to get his first CRX that he used to start doing HPDs in. So I've known him for a long time, and I know what he's been doing in Honda Challenge for the last 15, 20 years. And he kind of convinced me one time when we were at the track and the 240's engine blew up for like the third time that, you know, Honda Challenge is good, and it's a good class where you can tinker, you have a good point of entry, and the competition's close enough that you have a good benchmark to develop what you want. And for me, I was after, how do I develop the car? Because I can develop my driving, I can drive through issues, but I don't really know how to build the car up yet. So that was a big thing, and Honda Challenge had reasonably affordable entry costs and a good, reliable field that had benchmarks that I could compare myself to in a similar platform, right? You're all vaguely similar on power to weight. You're going to have people close to their minimum weight most of the time, so you know that, like, if you get closer to them, they can't pull an extra 200 pounds out of the car and pull away, you know, if you happen to get close. So that was what led me to Honda Challenge. And from there, the question is, okay, now you got to build a car. So I bought the cheapest GSR I could find on the East Coast. It had 250,000 miles on it or something. And I started kind of stripping things out of it and doing the normal things and getting it, like, reliable. I'll drive it around sometimes instead of my Suburban. And that was good. And
It's got to be better on gas than that Suburban.
Yeah, I mean, the Suburban, at the end, the Suburban started having a misfire that wouldn't go away. And I think it was like a pushrod valve train issue, because we did all the gaskets on the upper end of the engine and it didn't fix it. But yeah, I mean, the GSR was fun. It was a lot more fun to drive. I would find my route to work would take me on an exit ramp along 95, and I would do like, just see how fast it could go. And I learned that the car would reliably get up to like 130 indicated, so that seemed good. That was about what my 240 was doing with the SR once I chucked the KA in the garbage. So like the speed seemed there, and it seemed to handle pretty well at speed. It didn't do anything stupid. Like I had a cord growing up that got all floaty, and my 240s would get all floaty in stock trim when they were really fast. Yeah, and then you build the car. You strip it out, and ended up building the cage with a buddy of mine, which was good. It was cheap, because I basically only paid material, because he was like, I want to build a cage and figure out how to do it. I'm like, cool. Come by the house. We'll do it over a couple of weekends. And a year and a half later, we were done with the cage.
Okay. I was going to say, because a year and a half is, well, that's a long time, but a couple of weekends is probably optimistic. Especially if you don't know what you're doing.
So one, that's part of optimism, is not knowing what you're about to do. And two, it really only was like 3 weekends, maybe 4, that he actually was able to come by the house. And most of those, we got most of it done. There were some design choices that we made that hurt us in terms of how long it took. Basically, we made boxes for the main hoop instead of plates, and that slowed us down a ton. Probably have an extra day and a half of labor in those stupid boxes.
Yeah, I mean, it's traditional for some of the big cage guys to do boxes, but they have hundreds, if not thousands, of cages under their belt. So, and they probably have a lot more tooling than you were using.
Maybe. I mean, we had a tube bender that was manual, and we didn't have a notcher. But
they have brakes, they have plasma cutters, they have all these little things that make their life a little easier. So
They do.
Trust me. I hung out at Piper's shop for a while when my car was there. He's got everything I had when I was doing metal fabrication. So.
Yeah, and I fully believe Piper has more fancy tools than I have. But you can notch a tube with an angle grinder pretty easily after you do it a few times. There's good YouTube videos on it.
Oh yeah.
So
and
you
how to
build the
lay
car.
it out right and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, I mean, my buddy and I have been around motorsports long enough. We've seen enough cages. I think we had a good idea of what we wanted to do. And there's some ideas in the cage that I'm still really happy with, like how I did my door bars. Zero complaints about that. We'd probably do the A-pillar as a halo instead of a down bar with two bends that are not in plane with each other, because that was really complex and hard to get right and hard to get close to the A-pillar in terms of fitment. But that's kind of what you're expecting to learn, that kind of stuff when you go through that kind of project. So yeah, you build the car. 2 years late, haven't done an event in. So the 240's tech sticker says 2016, and I think I did 2 or 3 events between Lemons races, Chump Car races, and the first DE shakedown for the green car. In that 5-6 year period. So I was pretty rusty going into comp school, but I did have a background of a lot of seat time previously in a different platform.
Yeah, so you prep, obviously, to go through comp school. Your car has to pass NASA or whatever sanctioning bodies annual tech. So you were prepping to the CCR. So you caged it, you had the seat, you had the harnesses, but you weren't fully built to the rules, right?
Suspension-wise, I had most of that on the car already. It had the diff in it, which is important. It had a new final drive. I think it's got the more desirable fifth. I can't remember. I don't remember what it was when I looked into it recently.
It's like a 878 or something. It's out of the
Yeah.
EA GSR. For all the Honda Challenge people
I'm running Chris Michael's old sway bar in the back. I'm running his old coilovers. I'm running a lot of Jonathan's old spherical bushings and compliance bushings and stuff like that.
Okay, so
there's no front
that's
bar.
pretty close. It's pretty close to the rules.
I think I was running a splitter from the out at comp school. I think I had the splitter. I had a 9 Lives wing. Had the fire extinguisher, window net, halo seat. All that stuff was in the car. I don't know if I vented my hood for comp school. I think I did. I'm a firm believer in venting my hood because it definitely removes lift off the front end, and I don't want lift on the front end. I think it's bad in every possible way.
Yeah, especially when you turn, drive, and brake with those wheels. So.
Yeah, it's just asking your tires to give up quicker. I've been on the same Legend caliper setup in the front. We had year-old ECU in the car, which I didn't fully understand the ramifications of installing a non-VTEC ECU with an S300 into a VTEC car. So that threw me off a little bit.
Yeah, how many events did it take for you to figure out how to get that wired right and not on a switch?
Oh, I think there were at least 8 different setup iterations on that.
Okay.
Now
I feel bad.
So, there were a few different issues. So, full disclosure, I didn't have VTEC until 2/3 of the way through the season, or if I did, it was on a switch hardwiring power to the VTEC solenoid, which made me get the cams, but not the ECU maps for VTEC. So I really didn't have good VTEC until I think our last or second to last trip to October or to VIR, which would have been October or August.
Yeah.
Because we all skipped September because of nationals. And so, first mistake is I thought that the ECU would send a power signal, like a positive voltage, to trigger the relay to fire VTEC. Sends a ground signal. So my initial assumptions of how to make a VTEC hardwire off a relay thing function were not correct. So then we hardwired it, and it kind of worked. Then we tried a new jumper harness through the relay with a ground signal from the new jumper harness using the aux out on the S300 to the standalone relay that went to a new wire up to the VTEC solenoid. And that was kind of working, except we selected an output that our ECU didn't have, because I don't really know my way around Honda stuff, so I didn't know not all of the drop downs were available in the menu. So like you pick, A21, and maybe your ECU didn't have A21 or something. So I picked like the plenum actuation solenoid, which my car had, but your car, I guess, didn't have that, or something similar to that.
Yeah, it wasn't going to have it because it was an LS ECU.
Right. So then I took it to a friend of mine, and he switched it to like AC, because I guess maybe your ECU had AC functions or something. So we had a working output then, and it still wasn't triggering. It would trigger like for half a second on one pull, and then it would kick the engine light on, and you wouldn't have VTEC anymore. So we showed up to probably August like that, and then I have Baker looking at it, and he says, all right, fiddle, go run down the access road and tell me if you have VTEC. We do that a couple times, and I think on the third time we figure out that the VTEC solenoid itself is bad, so it's got an oil pressure sensor, and there's an option to either listen to it in the S300 or don't. So you turn off the option to not listen to it, or you turn off the safety feature of does the solenoid say you have enough oil pressure, because we could see on the gauge the car had tons of oil pressure. And then I suddenly had VTEC. And so that's when I started to have VTEC for the year. But that took a long time to work through and troubleshoot. And the main problem, I think, is that since I've never driven a VTEC car, like, on track, I didn't know what I was looking for. So, like, I'd drive it around and be like, it felt sort of slow. Maybe it felt a little faster. I don't know. And I think that was a big part of what took it so long.
Yeah, they're weird. Honda did a really good job of if you're not in VTEC, still sort of ramps up, It's got a good curve to it still. So you don't really know, And it's not like we tuned to have that.
I would disagree after I got it fixed.
Yeah.
Once I got it fixed, it was blatantly obvious what I was missing.
Yeah, but if you never had it, you were not going to know, because that small load still throws a curve, So.
Yeah, I mean, but the difference is probably 110 horsepower to like 170 horsepower. Because I was getting...
Oh, for sure.
When I didn't have VTEC working, I was getting lapped at the end of the races by the leading Miatas. And then nowadays, I barely get lapped by only the Spec 3 leaders. And otherwise, I'm driving around on my own. Unless there's somebody to play with.
In our region, that means you're doing all right. And once they stop coming around on you, then you're fine. Then you're mid-pack.
But kind of to go back to the comp school thing, you want to bring a reliable car that you know that you've sorted the issues out. You want it to be good. I had no VTEC the whole time. I had a stuck thermostat, and I went into limp mode one session. Those could have been major issues. I think I was one of between 2 and 4 people, I think, in the class of like 8 or 10 that they kind of called out and said, you passed right away. There was a couple people I think that didn't pass, and a couple of people that got kind of a extra talking to, and we'll look at you really carefully, and I think they passed. But it's not like the instructor clinics where everybody always passes by some strange miracle. Like, they are very happy to not pass someone if they don't demonstrate a certain level of skill.
So go ahead.
Yeah, so like, comfort at speed, going side by side, doing passing drills, like you gotta make sure you expose yourself to that before you go through comp school. You should be doing that in like DE3. You should be doing offline stuff in DE2 probably before you get to 3, depending on your region and how they break up the skill differentiation between the groups. And you should have really good situational awareness, both of cars and flags. Sometimes it's surprising seeing people in more advanced groups who forget to work on that.
Yeah, we had a bunch of folks. I think only maybe 4 of 20 passed in my group, which was 2019, 2018.
Wow.
Yeah. Everyone. So first off, I was the only person to go off track, and I did it twice. And that was on the start drill day, or not day, but the session with all the starts, because I was gobbling people up on the start, and then but overshooting my braking zone. Go figure. I do it all the time.
That's still something I'm playing with even after a season of racing.
Oh,
brake zone into 1 at the end of, like, after the start.
Yeah, 2.5 years in, and I still play with that too. So, but really, people messed up the test. Nobody really messed up in the driving portion. We would come into the classroom, and the lead instructor would be like, "You guys need to pick up your pace. You guys are doing parade laps," and we were being pretty conservative because we wanted to pass. We didn't want to screw up, right? But they wanted to see us at speed, so they kept prompting us for that. But outside of that, it was the test. Studying for the test. Now, I was fortunate because my wife...
Yeah.
I had flashcards, and my wife was like, "Are you studying?" She'd give me the guilt, right? And the 4.5-hour tow to VIR, she was quizzing me the whole time. But I'm not sure everybody else... I know for a fact there are people that never even read the CCR before they sat for the test.
Yeah, that was probably the thing I was most sketchy on, because I had no idea what the format was. I just knew that there was a written test. And I had heard, to read the scenarios at the back of the CCR, which, by the way, if you look at the page numbers, not the page number at the page, but like the page number on the PDF, pages 95 to 105 of the CCR have all the driver conduct stuff that's going to be on the written test at the end of your comp school.
Yes. And you should know that stuff.
Pay particular attention to the passing/racing incident diagrams of, like, who lost control and how, because that is the core of any interaction you're going to get with your... is it compliance? Who do we have to show up to when we hit somebody
compliance.
on track? Yeah. So when you go to compliance, they know that inside out and backwards because they do it every event. So you want to know at least what your stance was on why whatever happened.
For sure.
Sometimes you can make an okay decision and something bad happens. And sometimes you make a very questionable decision and something bad happens, and the outcome to you is going to be different depending on which of those scenarios you're involved in.
Yeah, I don't know how your test looked, but my test just wanted to know who was at fault. And you could be any of those cars on that track. You know, it was like A, B, C, D, or whatever, and they weren't necessarily saying you're in this car, but they would say A did this and B did that and C did this, and you know, who was at fault for the incident. They're just trying to make sure that you understand that when you're out there, there's some low percentage moves, and if you're caught there and you get, you know, if you make contact or wreck or whatever, that's points on your license. So they tried to make that abundantly clear in our group.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's mostly been out-of-class people I've been dealing with. And I've been dive-bombed a few times in surprising ways. Or, you know, you give a point one way, and they decide to take it the other way. Which is great, except you have to switch which direction you're tracking out when you realize they went a different way. You know, so that's not fun. So yeah, tips on comp school: don't do what I do. You know, bring a fully built car, or not fully built, but like at least prepped, reliable, and you know how it's going to handle. An unproven car at comp school is definitely a risk that I took that I would not recommend. Bring a friend. Be adaptable to issues, because you know, we had limp mode and VTEC issues and a thermostat that we gutted and rebled the coolant system and filled it with, I think we just grabbed water bottles out of the cooler.
Probably. That's what I would do.
You know, so you know, that was effective enough to get me through. Know the CCR, and then, you know, go into it with the right attitude. Some people think they know a lot more than they do at certain points in their driving career. I know when I was like 18, 19, and I'd done like a whopping 4 autocrosses in my life, I thought I knew everything. Later on I learned I didn't know a damn thing. But it took time to encounter kind of those humbling experiences where you grow.
Comp school is definitely a day to be humble, because things are going to come at you all day.
I mean,
you know,
in the debrief,
you had a radiator. You had a radiator issue. I broke a header. You know.
Yeah.
And my car ran fine for 2 years before comp school, and then that day I broke a header.
Yeah, and like my car averages 1 brake rotor every day or every other day of track sessions. So I don't remember if I had a brake rotor failure. Not failure, but a crack show up that required replacing at comp school or not. But
it doesn't do that still,
it wouldn't surprise me if I did that.
You're still eating rotors?
So without the brake ducting, it was 1 every day of track use. With the brake ducting, it's 1 every 2 or 3 days of track use.
And what pads are you on?
DTC 60s.
Okay, yeah, that's why.
But also, the rotors are $20 a piece shipped.
Oh,
so
yeah,
like in terms of running cost, it doesn't matter. There's 4 spares in the trailer.
I totally get it. So, when I was on the ITR setup, which is similar, and running DTC 60s and, you know, whatever, Rock Auto, cheapest to my door rotors, I was still eating them once a weekend. They were done, right? I switched to the ST43s, and I ran a season and a half on the cheapest Mini Cooper rotor setup, because I was running the Hoon 986 at that point brake setup.
Mm-hmm.
the cheapest, it was a whopping $24 a rotor. And I bought 2 sets. And when I sold my brake setup, I gave them a fresh set of rotors. It's all in that pad. I'm telling you, divert yourself from that pad and you don't have to look down there nearly as often.
Yeah, and I'll be more open to playing around with pad compound this year coming up than I was for 2022, just because my focus, like, if I knew how to manage an issue, I stopped caring about it. It's just like, okay, that's what I do for that. This next year I've got more power and less weight to deal with, so I've got to sort that out first, and then I'm going to look at probably
automatically
other
more faster. You're just going to be that much faster already. The rules gods have
Here's hoping.
gone in your favor.
I was not expecting them to smile on the GSR like that.
Oh, they needed to. It's essentially the way they set it up. It's a poor man's Type R. It may actually need more weight, but we'll wait and collect data, I guess. I say we. I got nothing to do with it. Honda Challenge will deal with that by everybody complaining to the rules committee, one way or the other. But
yeah, I mean, you look at Freddie's car and my car, and his car is overweight. But there's no way those cars, in my opinion, were going to be able to turn like a 212 at VIR. 214, maybe. But I didn't see the last couple of seconds coming in on that car.
We'll see. I didn't think it was possible either, but I think they're getting much closer. But earlier you said,
I feel like I've got a shot.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole point of our class is we take a whole bunch of different motors and a whole bunch of different cars and we try to make them pretty close to as equal as possible. So that's why I like it. But earlier you were talking about a benchmark and wanting to have benchmarks of people to race with. Did you ever run data in your cars before you started racing? Do you run data now?
I have a older AIM. I think just an AIM Solo, not a Solo 2 now. And I didn't run that until probably the last couple of events of the season at best.
Okay.
And then, so I don't have a ton of data from this year on it, but I have a couple events. And then previously I'd borrowed a buddy's AIM for like a year. I think I also borrowed his transponder for a year too. Actually, you probably know him. It was Will Tung, because I think he was a JMU guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he lent me his transponder and AIM for a while, I think, when I was running the 240. And so I was familiar with a little bit with what it could tell me, but it sounds dumb unless you see somebody running like a few seconds quicker than your car in something pretty similar. You don't think, all right, where am I screwing up? You think, I did pretty good. So having a benchmark that tells you suck and that there's room to improve is, for me at least, very important in the factors that make me motivated.
So I started running
if I was
data.
Just tooling around at the front, I probably wouldn't care.
Oh, no, everybody. They all look at data, even the front guys. I'm telling you.
Oh, I know they do.
For a second,
I'm just saying, like,
every place we're trying to find 5 seconds, right? So don't sleep on them. But so I'm a proponent.
No, my point is, like,
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying I'm a proponent of people who are an HPD who, God forbid, they build like a Spec 3 or some ridiculous car that's not a Honda Challenge car. And they have those benchmarks, but yet they're doing HPD 3, planning to go to comp school, and they have no idea what their lap times are. And I think that's a detriment. Now, I say that with a caveat because we can almost predict what our rookies are going to do. I think most of our rookies run in a 222 to 224 range the day of comp school. Slow, right? Mid-pack's running 214s, so they're 10 seconds off the mid-pack. But as soon as Saturday race happens, they go out for warm-up. They got to get all the actual race buzz going, right? They go out for warm-up, they knock a little rust off. They go out in qualifying, and maybe they try to latch onto a bumper. And then by the time the race hits, they're down into the 217, 218 range every single time. It's like clockwork. Every Honda Challenge rookie goes through that. They go from like mid to low 20s down to the 17, 18. And I felt it was a detriment to me because I was running data, and I went to comp school knowing I was still 10 seconds away. And everybody told me it's not a detriment. You just got to get out there and the time will come almost instantly. And they were right. And ever since, you guys run all the same times. It's ridiculous. There's videos of us betting on the guys at VIR. We were betting on their lap times. We were betting on who's going to finish the race or who's going to finish in front of who. It's imperative for people to look at data, but it's imperative for them to take that step.
Yeah, I think, I watch videos now and I see somebody in a DE3 session or something, and I think they're not trying. You look at the time on throttle when people go on and off the throttle between corners where they don't need to. You look at that and you're like, okay, you're not driving fast. You look at where they're braking and it's like, okay, you're a marker and a half early. You can just kind of guess how much time they have left in the bank. You look at a race group, and they're braking at the limit, but with a car 2 feet in front of them. So there's a different level of acceptable risk that lets you push it that little bit more. Whereas, like, if you did that shit in a DE session, a lot of groups would ask you to leave.
Well, I almost collected a GT350 Mustang at Fall Finale doing that in a DE session. So there's a reason for it.
Yeah, but that's Fall Finale. It's a different
we're
event.
goofing off, but that car is worth way more than my new car is worth. And that was probably my scariest moment, and I've done some stupid stuff out there. So
yeah, I've had a couple oopses. The 240's brakes were notoriously bad. I think I either had like a bent coilover or something, or just really jacked up corner weights, because it would always lock the passenger front every time. And that was annoying because, like, I was running 255 R comp, and those get expensive.
Wait till you put 17s on your Integra. It's extra expensive now.
Nope. At one point, I will see if Toyo saw fit to honor my my contingency claim for the regional championship, but at the moment, it is on hold.
What's that drama all about? Just because of how the championship shook out?
So, I don't know if it's that, because I don't think Brent or Mike claimed anything. Because they were messaging me on Facebook saying, hey, congrats. And I was like, wait, what? I was third. And then I checked the thing and it updated, and I won it by 2 points, and the whole spread for the top three was 4 points, which was crazy close. That's one Beast of the East 5-point race deciding, who's going to win. Like, if anybody
yeah.
skipped one of those, right, you're no longer in contention.
Well, if I didn't beat Mike at Summit Point, then he was going to win. Because I think there's a 10-point spread for us there.
Yeah, it's just crazy tight, how it shook out at the end. The issue was I hadn't been in a position where it was like, you should put in for your Toyo Bucks, because aside from the first race of the year where I got a third because everybody got DQ'd or broke, in my comp school weekend, I hadn't podiumed, so I was like, well, I don't think the contingency's worth it. I'm going to get maybe a tire, and I'm not planning on budgeting for a new set next year. So anyway, I printed out the results page from my laps or whatever it is as a PDF and tried to attach that. Well, it chopped off. It didn't make the dates clear. It chopped off half the page. It formatted weird. And so they're like, we can't see the event date or the race date. And I'm like, it's got 7 race dates on it. It's the whole season's results. So then I took a screenshot and I attached that after submitting a ticket, like saying, I think something's weird here. And they were like, we'll look at it again, was the response to the ticket. And then it went back into on hold. So I probably got to send him another support ticket email here in the next few days.
I still haven't put any Toyo Bucks in ever. I probably should. You talk about ordering tires maybe next year or whatever, but I eat tires every 2 events.
Yeah, I ran... Did I run the whole season? I ran the whole season except for Oktoberfest on the same set of 205s. All around.
Yeah, I won't lie, I
that I
missed
bought
that.
from Baker 3 years ago for like... I don't quite know. I think it was like $100. It's definitely less than 200. And then I got 2 free tires off of one of the E30 guys. And then I bought another set of used tires off Jonathan for, again, somewhere in the $100 to $200 range for the set. But that included a pair of 225s along with a fresher set of 205s, which was good because I'd started to cord 1 or 2 of my 205s. So it was good that I had some fresh cast-offs from other people to throw in the car at that point.
Yeah, that's definitely something comp school people need to look into, is get your hands on takeoffs from the class you're going to race. And if you don't have a buddy, then you really need to get closer to the guys in the class you're going to race and say, hey, I'm going to comp school on this date. Commit to it, because some of them will take extra time off just to be there, and then maybe they can help you with your car. Because in the end, they want to see you succeed, so they're bound to help you. So you should talk to the guys the folks you're racing with.
Yeah, but that's a good point. I mean, I didn't know any of the guys in Mid-Atlantic, really, except for Jonathan, who wasn't really running most of the year.
All you had to do was come over and talk to us.
I think I paddocked with you guys anyway. I just didn't know who anybody was.
I know you thought I was Michael Young for like half the year. So
dude,
we're both bald and beautiful, so it's okay.
I'm bad with names. I got Zach and Mark mixed up for most of the year. I know them apart now.
Yeah, tall, skinny white dudes. Okay, that's fair.
They both got beards.
Yeah, you're good.
But
it's fine.
But it took time for me to figure that out, and I wasn't figuring it out on my comp school weekend.
No, that's for sure. There's nothing else to think about but comp school on comp school weekend. So.
Yeah, and after that, it's keep your nose clean. Don't have any incidents for your first however many races it is to get off your provisional. I can't remember what the consequences are of having a contact form issue while you're on your provisional, but I recall they weren't ideal.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
I'm
for
pretty
comp
sure you're
school-
not supposed to get any of those. You shouldn't get points until you're off your provisional. And you shouldn't get points anyway.
Yeah.
In general. You should dread getting points.
No, I mean it's to be avoided.
I mean, you can't the way
You
it's
know,
set
I
up.
had-
If somebody hits you, say you're breaking into one, right? And somebody comes
Yeah.
and takes you out in one, and you did nothing wrong, you still get 1 point. That stuff, okay, whatever. But you being on the wrong end of the point system is when you're the one causing the problem. You don't want to do that.
No, and I think you have to be careful as a rookie to understand what the traffic's going to be coming up against you. I was getting passed by Miatas earlier in the season, and I saw one Miata come up on me, and I said, okay, I'll give him a car width and a half on the kink in the front straight of one. It wasn't one Miata, it was two Miatas, and they were trying to pass while they were passing me. So that made one of those guys upset at me because he had to back out. Otherwise, the three of us were going to meet and have to talk to Jeff Hall, which is our compliance director who you talk to when you crash in our region. So that was my mistake for not understanding the situation around me. And I'm thankful to the guy that pulled out or backed out of it a little bit to make sure that there wasn't an incident then.
They still have to make the pass clean. You rookies out there, all the other guys who have done this before, they're going to use stuff like this against you. So just realize that's going to happen. And you're going to learn a lot of lessons, probably in your first race weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very different environment in terms of on-track competition than what you might have seen previously if you haven't done like real wheel-to-wheel racing. Obviously very different than Champ Car and Chump Car, where they pay $50 for a license, and maybe the person has, NASA comp school passing skills, or maybe there's some idiot who's never been on a hot track before, and you just don't know in those types of run groups. It's a lot more intense than TT. In TT, you're not running close. You might help each other by giving somebody an easy pass, so like you go offline so they can keep their run going. But that's about as close as you get with TT. You might go side by side in an instructor group, but normally you're just kind of messing around. You're not like
And
trying
not
to
as
squeeze
close
out
as we
100%
get.
of the speed.
They're
Yeah,
not
I would
as
mess
close
with-
as we get.
They are not as close as we get. I would
we
mess
touch
with,
mirrors sometimes. So,
Yeah. Like, I would mess with, in the 240, one of my favorite games was to, like, point a Corvette by on the inside or outside of 5 at Summit, and then just be door-to-door with them through 9. Because once they start turning, they're not, and you take away half their track width, they can't accelerate good. So I would just stay on their door and practice side-by-side stuff anytime a Corvette came up to pass me, because I knew about what their speeds were coming out of the carousel.
yeah.
And so I was really comfortable offline because I enjoyed the challenge of it. But there were other people that, like, even in the instructor group, would never drive offline next to another car. And it was really confusing to me, like, why they were teaching people.
Yeah. I know that they've changed a lot of the HPDE setup since I've gone through it. Like, you got to take tests to get through from 2 to 3 and all that other stuff. And I really hope they're concentrating on getting folks comfortable with car control, because that's something you really need to work on before you get into comp school. And just the awareness and being close to people. That's huge. If you can get through that, you're going to be fine, assuming your car's reliable. And you studied the CCR.
Yeah, and I would say, like, on that list of things, like awareness, car control, and just kind of comfort next to another car, I'd say car control's probably bottom on that list for me. I think knowing where the other car is more important than a lot of other stuff when you're on track. Like,
Yeah, I
don't
mean,
push it past what you know you can control, but obviously you're going to have to push that at some point to figure out what's out there, car control-wise. But you can do that on your own terms. You can't really choose when a car comes up next to you.
yeah. I guess what I mean about that is when you're kind of getting run off course, because you let somebody on the inside of you in turn one, and then they overcooked it a little, and you guys are both getting out there on the marbles. You're not gonna have your wheel pointed straight anymore because you're just in the dirt, in the marbles, whatever. You're going to be put in situations where you're going to stretch your car control skills. At least for me, it was a stretch for me. I had a really neutral car. I never really got it loose. I still work to get my car loose. I'm still working to get the new car loose. Because apparently loose is fast. And the only time I find out how loose I am is whether it's stone cold rear tires or I'm in the marbles. And I really don't have that car control skill set that I really want. So that's probably third on the list really for comp school. But I think as soon as they pass you and hand you your provisional, that car control, you're going to need it because they're going to be freight trains coming at you. Like, you're no longer the top dog in HPD 3. You're the small fish in a gigantic ocean, and they're all raging.
Yeah, I think I had benefited from owning a 240 because I took it drifting for a while. I wasn't very good at it, but there's some things you learn clutch kicking a car around a track where you're power sliding, you throw the wheel to full lock, and it's just sitting on the steering stops, and you're controlling your car's angle just with how much throttle you're applying. That teaches you a lot pretty quick. It's probably the most fun I've had driving, but it only lasts like 10 seconds, which is terrible. But it's definitely really good for like damage control situations where like you feel the rear step out and you're like, okay, what do I do? And just throw the wheel. And you know what you need to do when you feel the rear start to slide. You know if you can anticipate a slide, how much easier that makes the situation to manage after going through and doing that kind of stuff. The difference is different platforms are going to want different things. So like I learned that in front wheel drive, you don't just feather the gas and pedal it out at whatever throttle you were at when you started sliding. You nail the gas and help make that pull you out. And so I had an interesting high-speed spin earlier in the year. But the next time I got into that situation, I kept my foot down and I didn't spin. But I did rip my splitter off, so now I need to build a new one of those.
At least they make one for your car. I have to fabricate everything.
Mine will be fabricated. I actually need to think about how I'm building that, because I don't know if I'm getting a new piece of the fiberglass honeycomb core thing that I used last year. I have a vaguely car-shaped piece of plywood that was in my garage for a long time, so I might try and adapt that.
Yeah, but you don't need the weight in your GSR anymore.
That's true. It's also like either 3/8 or 1/4 inch plywood, so it would need some reinforcement.
If it's like 3/8 birch, you'll be okay. But if it's regular old stuff, then it needs to be reinforced.
But I got to make new mounting brackets entirely because of what got ripped off
You
the car
can
when
buy
I took everything
them.
off.
They sell them. They
But
sell
I
brackets.
want to control exactly where it sits.
Okay,
So
that's fair.
part of this winter is taking the excuse to rebuild the splitter and doing it a little bit better. So like last year, my splitter was really long and really tall, which meant the front of the car had to sit fairly high. So this year I'm going to build it a lot closer, tucked up into the car, so that I can run the front of the car like 3/4 of an inch lower-ish. And so hopefully if I build the car with a correct ride height in mind, it'll be more effective than it was this last year.
Well, we're all pretend aerodynamic engineers anyway. I mean, I don't know what you studied at Virginia Tech, but...
I was a business major.
Nice. You go to a tech school to learn business.
That's right.
Yeah.
And now I work with a bunch of engineers, and I try not to sound like an idiot. Sometimes I do.
Oh, yeah.
But then sometimes I say things that help me out that they don't factor in. But most of that's not related to my college education. That's just me knowing that if you have an injection molded part, you can take material away from the mold to add material to your part that comes out, but you can't make the part thinner afterwards.
Right.
And,
Makes sense to
other
me.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
Where you think about the process a little bit and you're like, wait, nope, that's backwards.
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of my comp school story. It was fun. I learned a lot.
Yeah, I learned why you chose
and I
Honda
learned-
Challenge. It's Baker's fault.
Yeah. Yeah, blame him for having one more car in the car counts.
I mean, that's good. That's good. We need more.
I mean, it helps that, like, I think a lot of it was that I knew Baker keeps half a Honda dealership with spare parts in that trailer.
Yes, he does.
He's been doing this a while, so, like, when he's at an event, I can be like, hey, what should I be doing for setup? And he can kind of mentor you without putting too much effort into it, because he's been there before. Especially if you're driving the exact same chassis that he's been running for so long.
He's really good at giving you 90% of the solution and letting you figure out the last 10. He's really fair about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll ask him, like, hey, what do you think I should run for tire pressures? And most of the time he's pretty open with that. I think he knows that he's got me beat, but that's besides the point.
But does he tell you left front is this number and right front is this number? Does he tell you all of that, or does he just give you a zone front and rear? Oh, he gives you all that?
He'll tell me, like, do you want to do half tire pressures or whole tire pressures? And he'll give me each corner, normally.
Yeah. That's the detail he puts into it. So,
but also, like, I'm sitting there recording my notes, like, every session and stuff. I ask him that question. He's flipping through 15 pages of previous notes of what he's done at that track in different weather conditions to give me that guess.
Yes.
So when you get into this, take notes, learn how to refer to them, because clearly there's something there, and his guesses are definitely better than my guesses most of the time on tire pressure. Sometimes I'll be within, like, a half 1 psi where he would be. So I've got, like, the right idea, but I'm not doing the mental math correctly yet. But also, like, there's a learning curve in developing your car, right? And if your buddy can say, here's all my used stuff that's got a bunch of miles on it that I don't quite want to run anymore, and here's the parts you need to spend money on, here's the parts where you don't need to spend a ton of money on, here's my takeoff tires, I'm interested in running the best times possible with fresh rubber. You can have these things, for reasonable cost. I don't think I would have been able to come in with a car as remotely, like, close to prepped to the rules if I hadn't had somebody's brain to pick like Baker, right?
Yeah, I mean,
It's like there's
but that
years
also
of experience I didn't need to have to go through.
for sure. But that goes to the whole thing where you're thinking about comp school, you know what class you're going to run, make friends, right? You're
Yeah.
you need to break out of your shell a little bit, maybe wait till the sun starts setting and you start to see people with adult beverages in their hands, and go around to the guys that you think you're going to race with and start making friends, because they will help you. They'll help you figure your car out. They might help you comp school day. They're definitely going to help you. I don't know one class in our paddock that's not going to actually help a competitor get on track. You know, you could kick my butt, and then the only reason I pass you is because an axle breaks. Well, if I have an axle for you, I'm going to give that axle to you, because I need to know that I can beat you without you breaking something. You know, I need to figure out how to get that little bit faster. And I think it helps our group that it's can be pretty big group, that everybody is sort of an eye shot of somebody, right? At the end of 45 minutes on a Sunday, we see each other still, you know. And
Yeah, I mean,
I don't see the front, like the front, right? I'm not going to see Baker at the end of 45 minutes. But I see Mike, I see Mark, you know. And you guys at the end of the year, you know, you guys were picking up so much pace. I was so happy for like you and Mang and everybody, Freddie, all of them, because we were at VIR and I looked in my rearview mirror. Mark's like right up my keister. I'm trying to get up Mike's keister, but I noticed not that far away, you and Mang are coming. And we were like 3 or 4 laps in, and I didn't see that before, you know? So that just means your pace picked up.
Yeah, like the first few events without VTEC, everybody was gone by turn 3. It was bad. But once VTEC was working, then it was like, okay, the first 2 laps, I can still see everybody. And then, you know, okay, now I can see Mang for the first 2/3 of the race, right? And that's motivating to know that you're getting closer, but don't sit there and practice driving at 9/10 just because you can't see anybody. Because the reason they're pulling away is because they're pushing that little bit more every lap. And that's the difference between seeing everybody walk away and being right there with them.
Also,
so don't let the absence of people around you get in your head and let you slack off.
Oh, for sure. The one big thing for me, at least, and maybe for you, I don't know, but and you'll learn the lesson pretty quickly, is when that green flag drops, there's only a couple of corners per track you need to watch with your speed. Every other corner, you need to be racing, like, hard, right? You don't... when the green flag drops, I'm not doing the same speed through South Bend at VIR, okay? But you can bet I'm going to run
I see what you're saying.
4. I'm going to run the flat S's. I'm going to run up the S's that hard. I'll check up a little extra for South Bend, maybe the first lap or 2, but you don't hesitate. You have to be aggressive off the break, and that's a big deal for comp school kids. I know you're not supposed to get in body contact and all that stuff, but that doesn't mean your level of aggression doesn't need to be high. So you got to remember that.
Yeah, I mean, and the standing start is definitely a really good example for that, because you're going to come out of the standing start, you're going to go into turn 1 a lot slower than normal, so you can go deeper than you think you can, but don't go too deep. So you're braking a lot later into 1, but then as soon as you're out of 1 and into turn 2 and 3 and whatever, you're in a car that has not quite got your tires up to temp yet, so there's not going to be what you normally have available, like you said. Depends on the track. I think at VIR, ease off a bit for 10. You can't quite carry the same speed through 3. probably the entrance to the flat S's is probably a little bit less agreeable because it's a bit off camber.
Yeah, we're usually stacked up
Summit,
going into 3, so we're not
Summit,
really pushing
you can
that hard.
probably almost do your normal thing through 4, and then you just probably modulate how much gas you put down going through the carousel, and by the time you're going into 10, it should be full speed.
See, I have a different outlook
start.
on Summit, because what I'm doing in 4 when my tires are hot, there ain't no way I can do it when they're cold. Turn 3, 4, and 10, I'm more reserved for a lap or 2. And then once they come in,
it also depends.
Boogie.
It's the other big thing about like the opening lap versus your normal race laps is that your opening lap, a lot of people are side by side and making big adjustments for the traffic that's immediately around them. So, if I see 2 people going side by side around the first half of the lap, I know that even if they're normally a few seconds quicker than me, I can keep pace with them on that opening lap if I don't have to worry about a car on my door, because I'm going to have the full width of the track and they don't. So there's situations where that makes a big difference, or like you let somebody by or somebody gets by you, and like let's say you go through the chute and you have somebody either left or right in front of you turning into 5 at Summit. Well, as soon as they're in your way, you're going to change your line into 5 to try and maximize getting a run on them either through 6 or 7. I don't see that behavior in the DE sessions a lot. Like, I'll see it in the more advanced groups, but I don't see it in the kind of school groups, if you will. Like that instant adjustment of, oh, they're here now, I'm going to be somewhere else.
Yeah. Well, Steve, we've done a little over an hour on comp school and your rookie year and how you got there. Outside of making friends and being prepared and studying for the tests, is there anything else we need to cover for comp school, you think?
I think it's a good overview of comp school. Have a sorted car, be reliable, bring help or know the people in the paddock, be adaptable to issues that you might encounter because you're probably going to get thrown some stuff you didn't expect. Be ready for a really busy weekend, and study the book. Pages 95 to 105 in the NASA 2023 CCR.
Very specific of you.
Yeah, I looked it up right before the call.
And prepared. What a great guest.
But yeah, I mean, those are the big things, and understand that you're going to have the opportunity to learn a lot of things that you probably haven't learned previously. And so, be open to learning those things and enjoy it, because the experience is only new one time, right? After that, you're refining what you need to do. So enjoy the new parts.
Yep. Well, thanks for coming on. For you listeners out there, feel free to share this with your friends and give the podcast a 5-star review. Until next time, Steve.
Yeah.
I appreciate it, man. Take care.
Well, thanks for having me. Take care. Bye.
Until next time, keep working on yourself, keep working on the car, and let's get faster.